In this presentation, we will take a look at multiple choice questions related to governmental accounting, going through those questions and then practicing test-taking skills with them. First question, modified accrual basis is used for either A, proprietary and fiduciary funds, B, governmental funds, C, governmental and fiduciary funds, or D, internal service funds. Let's go through this again using the process of elimination. Modified accrual basis is used for either A, proprietary and fiduciary funds. So the proprietary funds are going to be those items, those funds that are more like a for-profit, and proprietary giving that indication. So you would think of the funds that those would be the ones that you would use more of a normal type of accrual as opposed to the modified accrual. So I don't think it's going to be A. B says the governmental funds, and so that's a grouping of funds, the governmental funds, so that could be it. I'll keep that. C says governmental and fiduciary funds. So now between B and C, note we have governmental funds in both of them, and then we've added fiduciary funds here. So modified accrual basis is used. You would think that if it was used in C, it would also be in B. So just keep that in mind. And then D says internal service fund. So the internal service fund is actually a proprietary type fund, and it's gonna be something that's going to use a normal type of accrual because it's going to be more similar to a business type of activity. So between B and C, the modified accrual basis is used for either the governmental funds or the governmental and the fiduciary funds. You would think the more correct answer would be the governmental funds, because if C was right, then B would have to be right. Now it could be the fact that C would be more correct, but in this case, it's going to be B. It's going to be the final answer. Modified accrual basis is used for governmental funds, and that's going to be a fund category. Next question. For modified accrual basis, revenue is recognized when either A, measurable and available, B, collected in cash, C, authorized by the budget ordinance, and D, earned. Let's go through this again using the process of elimination. For the modified accrual basis, revenue is recognized when measurable and available. That sounds like a term that seems familiar. I'll keep that. B says collected in cash. So that would be more of a cash basis. So this is some kind of accrual. It's a modified accrual. So I wouldn't think it would just be cash collection, or else it would be a cash basis. C, authorized by the budget ordinance. So authorized, possibly doesn't seem, I'll keep it for now. And then D says earned, which is kind of like the accrual basis. You would think when it would be earned, we would recognize it under accrual. So between A, C, and D, measurable and available, authorized by the budget ordinance, or earned, I would think it would be between A and D. D being the what we would think kind of on an accrual basis, possibly different, and therefore I would go for A being the final answer. So the modified accrual basis, revenue is recognized when A, measurable and available. Next question. Which is a governmental fund? Either A, private purpose trust fund, B, internal service fund, C, capital projects fund, or D, enterprise fund. So which is a governmental fund? Those are going to be a grouping of funds. So it's going to be the largest grouping of funds that we typically have. So is it A, so which one of these are going to be in that grouping of governmental funds? A, private purpose trust fund. So a trust fund. Now a trust fund is going to be something that's usually a fiduciary, because we're holding something in trust as like kind of an agent. So that's not going to be one of our normal kind of governmental type of funds. The B says the internal service fund, and so I'll keep that for now. C says the capital projects fund, and that's going to be when we have the capital projects. So if we're like long-term type of projects that we're putting together. And then D says the enterprise fund. So of these three, the internal service funds, the capital projects fund, or the enterprise fund, note that B and D are actually the proprietary funds. Those are the ones that kind of we have revenue similar to a business, and therefore we use kind of more of an accrual basis, so we group them in a different section. The capital projects fund is the one that we would think more of a governmental type fund, because we're basically, that would be more of a kind of, you think maybe a standard type of fund where we're putting money together for a long-term project like a library or a bridge or something like that. So C is going to be the final answer. Which is a governmental fund? C, the capital projects fund. Next question. Financial resources set aside to pay principal and interest on general long-term debt can be accounted for using either A, proprietary funds, B, bonds fund, C, debt service fund, or C, debt service fund, or D, internal service fund. So let's go through this again. Process of elimination. Financial resources set aside to pay principal and interest on general long-term debt can be accounted for using either A, the proprietary fund. That's going to be similar to like a for-profit type of fund, or some fund that's going to have activity similar to a for-profit kind of activity, and therefore on an accrual basis. So that doesn't seem like the one here. B says bonds fund. That sounds more reasonable because that might be some kind of debt. We're talking about long-term debt. It could be bonds. And then C says debt service fund, which should sound somewhat familiar as a fund that we've listed. So it could be that. And then the internal service fund. Internal service fund is actually a type of proprietary fund. And so it's not going to be an internal service fund. So between B and D, those sound most reasonable for debt. Let's go through it again. Financial resources set aside to pay principal and interest on general long-term debt can be accounted for using, and the answer is going to be the debt service fund. That's the one that should sound more familiar. We have a debt service fund. So final answer, C.